Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I just at the outset quote the two leading experts on the constitution of trading deals who write in a blog for the London School of Economics, and I quote, "It has been suggested that a failure to vote in favour of the Brexit deal is a vote for a no deal. Such a suggestion is, from a legal and constitutional perspective, entirely wrong. Similarly, a vote in favour of the bill is not a vote in favour of the deal. It is simply a vote to give the executive the powers set out in the deal." So we have heard from the Tories this afternoon an entire afternoon of nonsense. It is constitutionally and legally untrue. So now we've dispensed with that, let's deal with the real subject at issue today. And the real subject at issue today is the change that will take place tomorrow at 11 p.m. between what we as citizens of Europe enjoy and what we will fail to have at 1 minute past 11. Now, that is the argument that Jamie Halcrow-Johnson this morning in the committee tried to avoid. It is the argument that Ruth Davidson tried to avoid. But that is the issue today. It is what we will lose. I've spent 4.5 years on the issue of Brexit, and I regard today actually as a very sad day, because the Scottish Government has worked hard to try and achieve a compromise. We've had 28 meetings of JMC, and I have to say many of them have been appalling. We've had committees, letters, publications. We've gone the extra mile. And at the end of the day, tomorrow at 11 p.m, we will have to admit defeat on that matter. Temporarily, but it will be defeat, because we have not been able to stop this monumental act of self-harm. And we should stand back for a moment and look at the bigger picture here. And I was very taken both by the contributions from Patrick Harvie and from Bruce Crawford, because the bigger picture is both how we got here and our young people and where they go from here. And Patrick Harvie talked about the role of the EU as a peaceful and peacemaking organisation. And I must have spoken hundreds of times around Scotland about Brexit over the last 4.5 years. And it's a story that from time to time I would tell, and it's a very personal story, and I want to tell it here because it means a great deal to me. And it was brought on, my memory of it was brought on by a speech I heard in Berlin, and I can tell you the day, on the 17th of November 2016, from Martin Schulz, who was then President of the European Parliament. And he talked in a very moving way at a dinner that I was at in Berlin about the way in which the Second World War had damaged his family, created absolute chaos within his family, and a number of members had died and some had been wounded. But he pointed out the extraordinary nature of what happened next, because the victor nations reached out their hand to the vanquished nation and said, "Never again. Never again on this continent will this happen." And that was a remarkable and unique thing. And I was very struck at that moment by something in my own history. My father volunteered at the age of 19 for the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders. He was on the beach in Dunkirk when he was wounded through the knee at the age of 20. And he was carried off the beach in Dunkirk. Now, what would it have been like for a 20-year-old young man on the beach in Dunkirk, brought up in the douce wee town of Troon? What would it have been like? What terror he must have felt. How he must have wondered if he would live or die, if he would ever see his own country again. But he did. He lived, though he had that wound for the rest of his life. But that never happened to me when I was 20. And it never happened to my son when he was 20. And if it is only for that reason, that I regard the EU as something to remain within, then I will argue for that forever. Forever. And that is the issue that we address today. Because the issue is, what happens tomorrow at 11 p.m? What is the comparison between what we have now and what we lose? And the first thing we lose is that intangible. It is the belief that peace and prosperity comes from the work of sovereign nations who freely pool part of their sovereignty in order to work together. That is what we will lose, or what the United Kingdom will lose, for no good reason, except prejudice, a prejudice fueled by tabloid newspapers, pandered to by the Conservatives. No, I don't want to take into direction. Pandered to by the Conservatives and aided and abetted by the Conservative members in this chamber. And that is the shame they should feel. If this deal was really so good, why are the Conservatives so keen to blame all those who will not vote for it? Surely they would want to take this deal to themselves and claim all the credit for it. But the truth is that this deal is a very bad deal, and they have sought to hide it under the economic effects of COVID. And they want now to move on from it, to persuade us all to forget about it, to talk in some artificial language of unity, and to believe that we will simply accept what has taken place. Well, I won't accept it, because I won't give up on that intangible. And many people in Scotland will not accept it, because they will look at this set of circumstances and say a number of things. They will say, first of all, they have not been told the truth. They will say that the people who have persuaded them to follow this deal themselves did not believe in this deal. And they will say they have taken an opportunity, such an opportunity, from our young people. There's been lots of quoting, Presiding Officer, people who spoke in this debate or that debate about this matter. Let me quote Miles Briggs, who spoke in the same debate that I spoke in on the 28th of June 2016, the first debate after the vote. He said, "Our young people take an international view. We need to make sure that they have the opportunity to study, work and travel that they had before." I don't think Miles Briggs is a bad person. I don't think many of the people on the Tory benches are bad people. But good people can be tainted by bad actions. They can be tainted by making promises which they not only failed to keep, but they actually even undermined the things they had, like the Erasmus scheme. No, I'm sorry, I'm not going to. They can be tainted by arguing for a no deal, and then pretending that they did not do so. They can be tainted, particularly tainted, by failing to lift a finger to help those people who will be so badly affected. The fishermen, the farmers, the exporters, our young people, those who defend our law and order, even the Arbroath Smoky. Because we heard about the Arbroath Smoky this afternoon, but the reality is there is no new legal protection for geographic indicators, none in this deal. So even the one thing that was quoted as the advantage of the deal, I don't want to talk down the Arbroath Smoky. I'm conscious the member representing Arbroath Smokies is here in the chamber. But it is significant that the one thing that was claimed as a victory turned out not to be a victory. Presiding Officer, we should all be saddened by today. We've heard this ridiculous defence of the deal from the Conservatives, this ridiculous and threadbare defence. But it is not over. It is not over. I spoke in that debate on the 28th of June, and I talked about what had made us European. And we are European not because of a treaty that we signed 50 years ago, nor do we stop being European because of a treaty that somebody else signed today. It's not half a century of EU membership that's made us European. It is centuries of engagement. We were European before we were British. We sent students to the continent. We shared citizenship with France. We appealed our very nationhood to Rome. Wine was being shipped to my constituency, Loch Fionn, in the 15th century. In war and in peace, Nancogi Nanshi, we looked to Europe, and they looked to us, in Voltaire's words, for our very idea of civilization. So we have an existential choice again. We have a choice whether we can call ourselves European, or we have to narrow our horizons in the way that the Scottish Conservatives, to their shame, are telling us to narrow them. Well, I won't narrow my horizons. I am European, and I will remain European. I am European even if I didn't choose to be so. And in time, this country, Scotland, will return to membership of the EU. And in so doing, we will simply make the choice we have made for centuries. And what we will remember is those people who tried to stop us making that choice. That is a foolish thing to do, because even the Scottish Conservatives cannot stand against the will of the Scottish people.